Like our economic and political walls, stories too are defined by the principle of Nkali. How they are told, who tells them, when they are told, how many stories are told, are really dependent on power. Power is the ability not just to tell the story of another person, but to make it the definitive story of that person. So that is how to create a single story. Show a people as one thing, as only one thing, over and over again, and that is what they become.
The stories of the African independence movements which took place in the 20th century are yet to be told. During the wave of struggles for independence in European-ruled African territories, individuals gave of themselves in a fight for their identity, their territory, and their land. We have sung the praises of many a heroes in the struggle, but we have not sung enough. These are some of the unsung verses of their song. In Mozambique, a 13-year-old girl from Vilanqua would rise to become a revolutionary fighter in Frelimo alongside her comrade and soon-to-be husband, Samora Machel. Josina Abiatam Temba at a tender age joined a students' organization which secretly encouraged a positive sense of cultural identity and advocated for political education. At the age of 18, Josina fled the country to join Frelimo in Tanzania. She did not make it because she was arrested after traveling 800 miles. The courageous Josina later escaped and this time arrived in Dar es Salaam. Because she was fully aware of the objectives of colonialist education, she is said to have observed that the colonialists wanted to deceive us with their teaching. They taught us only the history of Portugal, the geography of Portugal. They wanted to form in us a passive mentality to make us resign to their domination. But we were aware that we were Mozambicans and we would never be Portuguese. Together with other women, she joined Nyachingwea, a military training camp in southern Tanzania in 1967, and it was during this time that she met Samora Machel and married him in May 1969. At 24, Josina became the head of the women's section in Frelimo's Department of International Relations. It is at this time that her health declined rapidly. She died in Dar es Salaam on 7th April 1971. At the tender age of 25. The impact of her death on her partner Samora was so profound that in her honor, Machel wrote a poem entitled, Josina, You Are Not Dead. Part of it reads,
Thus, more than wife, you are to me sister, friend, and comrade in arms. How can we mourn a comrade but holding the fallen gun and continuing the combat? My tears will flow from the same source that give birth to our love, our will, and our revolutionary life.
7th April is celebrated as National Women's Day in Mozambique as a depiction of her short, exemplary life. In colonial Kenya was born Mianzi Wamenza in Bungale village in the coast region in 1860. Mecca Tilili was one of the first women in Kenya to rise up against British colonial power between 1913 and 1914. After getting her first son Katilili, she acquired the name Mekatilili, translating to Mother of Katilili, but she lost her husband soon after. As a widow, she had authority to speak up because widows were respected among the Giriama. Mekatilili was opposed to the British colonial influence because of the forced recruitment of Africans to serve in the First World War, the hard tax, and the land seizures. Because her younger brother had been forcefully recruited, the issue was personal to her. She walked from Kaya to Kaya, the Mijikenda shrine, from Kaloleni to Galana, addressing people in barazas about the colonial influence. She administered oaths where people swore not to betray their culture and not to be traitors. She would dance the Kifudu dance as a form of communication in the barazas. Mekatilili sought the help of a medicine man, Wanje wa Mwadorika, who assisted her to galvanize and organize the rebellion. Mekatilili influenced the Giriama to start defending their culture and refused to be forced to work. As a result, Mekatilili and Wanje wa Mwadorika were arrested by the British administration in October 1913 and sent to Mumias in Western Kenya. They were sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. But in April 1914, they escaped from prison and walked back all the way to the coast region. In August 1914, the British burned Kaya Fungo, where most meetings would be held. The Giriama retaliated by attacking the colonial headquarters in Wangea and burning the District Commissioner Arthur Champion's camp, the jail, and the police post. Mekatilili was arrested again, and this time was taken to Kismayu on the Somali coast. She escaped again. Eventually, the British had to relent. As a result of the continued revolts, they abandoned the plan to settle on the land of the Giriama. She was made a member of the new local council in 1924. Mekatilili's actions were symbolic, as they had in fact been prophesied years before by another prophetess, Me Poho, who predicted the coming of a tough female hero who would fight the white butterflies that had descended on the Giriama. Mekatilili died in 1925 and is celebrated to date in Giriama cultural festivals as one of Kenya's heroes, Mashujaa. A statue was erected in her honor in Malindi town and in Bungale village, and at the Mashujaa corner at the Uhuru Gardens in Nairobi. Muthoni Kirema, popularly known as Field Marshal Muthoni, was born in Kieni in Nyeri County in 1931. She joined the Mau Mau liberation struggle in the forest as a fighter. A toughened and skilled leader, she was in charge of about 300 women in the forest. Her zeal and commitment to the liberation struggle earned her the rank of Field Marshal, which was conferred upon her by the Mau Mau leader, Marshal Dedan Kimathi. After the mysterious disappearance of General Madenge, Kimathi's second in command, Muthoni was quick to fill his shoes and fought gallantly to the end. Like her compatriots, Muthoni grew the trademark dreadlocks, which she has kept for more than 50 years. Today at 83, she says she will only cut her dreadlocks, which she views as a part of the history of Kenya, when she meets President Uhuru Kenyatta, whom she wants to openly acknowledge that the Mau Mau played an important role in the liberation of Kenya. Ngina Mohoho, popularly known as Mama Ngina, was born in 1933 to become Kenya's first lady. After Kenyatta's arrest and detention at Kapenguria in 1952, she too was arrested and incarcerated at the infamous Committee Maximum Prison, adjacent to the soon-to-be-revealed secret prison for women known as Gitamayo. Women now posed a threat to the oppressors, and as a result, Ngina was isolated from other prisoners for fear of her influence. Here, the women prisoners were divided into groups named after animals to dehumanize them. Upon her return to Gatondo, she was welcomed by the sight of a demolished home. Forced to start over, she reverted back to subsistence farming in order to sustain her household in the absence of her husband. After the 1963 independence, she acquired the name Mama Ngina, the mother of the nation. She is the proud mother of Kenya's fourth president, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta.
It was not an easy walk to freedom for Mama, because separating a mother from her children is like depriving her of her soul. Yet our proud mother braved the pain and humiliation of imprisonment because, like the proverbial giraffe, she could see far and looked forward to a brighter future.
the living legend.
The flame of the independence struggle spread to the north against the French imperial power. Rejecting the French assimilation arose a fierce fighter, Jamila Bohered, who fought strongly for her Algerian identity. She became the face of the Algerian Revolution. When others chanted, "France is our mother," she chanted, "Algeria is our mother." Born in 1935 with a revolutionary spirit, she rose to become the liaison agent for the commander Yassir Sadi. She was imprisoned and sentenced to hang by the guillotine after being accused of a bomb attack in a cafe where 11 people were killed in 1957. During her trial, her soon-to-be husband, a French lawyer, Jacques Verge, defended her, which resulted in her death sentence being postponed indefinitely. She was then taken to France, but later released upon global pressure alongside other prisoners. Today, she still champions various revolutionary causes in Algeria. Her life has been depicted on screen in movies such as The Battle of Algiers, Jamila the Algerian, and in a documentary titled Terror's Advocate. During the height of the Ugandan Bush War in 1981 to 1986, Byanyima would rally alongside her comrades Besigye and Museveni in the fight against the dictatorial Obote regime. Museveni, Byanyima, and her husband Kiza Besigye were combatants in the National Resistance Army during that war. Beyond the battle for liberation, she has achieved significantly both academically and professionally, for instance, becoming the first female Ugandan to become an aeronautical engineer. She served as a member of the Constituent Assembly that drafted the 1995 Ugandan Constitution, after which she then served 2 consecutive terms as a member of parliament. Byanyima and her husband have since fallen out with the Ugandan president because of his repressive, undemocratic rule, despite his earlier stated convictions. Byanyima, alongside her husband, has been the face of the opposition, running the affairs of the reform agenda. Born on the 13th of January 1959, she is currently the executive director of Oxfam International, to which she was appointed in May in 2013. She has cut a niche as a woman activist.
Because we are activists, because we believe in causes, and the cause that we have committed ourselves to for so many years is a cause we are ready to die for.
Living out of the country, most Ugandans have missed the fiery side of Winnie Byanyima.
They can rather take my life, I don't care. But I will fight to the last drop of my blood.
I look forward to visits so much, but the trip back is awful. I feel so empty. I can't help thinking of all those years of our lives that are going down the drain. Our best years. Tortured, subjected to house arrest, kept under surveillance, held in solitary confinement for over a year and banished to a remote town, Winnie endured to become the prominent face of anti-apartheid. In 1969, she spent close to 18 months in solitary confinement at Pretoria Central Prison. A painful blow dealt her way. This would fuel her revolutionary spirit to proceed further in organizing local clinics that campaigned actively for equal rights. Born on September 26, 1936 in South Africa, Winnie was truly an activist, a politician, and headed the African National Congress Women's League. She is currently a member of the ANC's executive committee. She remains popular amongst her supporters, who refer to her as Mother of the Nation.
I resented the fact that I didn't have a name before. I was always Mandela's wife. Mandela's wife said this. It was never my personal view. I then developed the me in me because I felt that that was wrong. And this happens all the time to our women. We are never individuals. We are always defined in terms of who you are married to.
Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf occupies one of the most enviable positions of being the world's first elected black female president and Africa's first elected female head of state. She was born on October 29, 1938 in Monrovia, Liberia. Upon returning to Liberia after pursuing her education, Johnson Sirleaf served as an assistant minister of finance in President William Tolbert's government, whose administration ended in 1980. Johnson Sirleaf went into exile in Nairobi, Kenya, and the United States, where she worked as an executive for the international banking community. Ellen Johnson ran against Taylor and lost during the 1997 presidential elections. However, in 2005, she took over the leadership of the Unity Party, and in 2006, the Iron Lady, as she was known, finally became the world's first elected black African female head. Soon after her inauguration, she successfully submitted an official request to Nigeria for Taylor's extradition. 5 years later, she shared the 2011 Nobel Peace Prize with Lema Bowie and Tawakkol Karman for their nonviolent struggle for the safety of women and for women's rights to full participation in peace-building work.
On behalf of all the women of Liberia, the women of Africa, and women everywhere in the world who have struggled for peace, justice, and equality, I accept with humility the 2011 Nobel Peace Prize.
Popularly known as Teurai Ropa, which translates to spill blood, Joyce Mujuru was one of Zimbabwe's celebrated liberation fighters. She was born in Mount Darwin in 1955 in Mashonaland, the northeastern part of Zimbabwe. Her revolutionary spirit emerged actively in her teenage years when she dropped out of high school in her second year to join her fellow comrades in the Zimbabwe African National Liberation Army that fought the British occupation in Zimbabwe. Her nickname, Teurai Ropa, originates from the fierce role she played in 1974 during the liberation struggle that saw Mujuru bring down a helicopter with her machine gun. In the same period, she would earn various positions. She became a member of the General Staff of the Zimbabwe African National Liberation Army, a commander at Chimoio camp in Mozambique, a member of the Central Committee of the Zimbabwe African National Union, and the Secretary for Women's Affairs. She was married to the late General Commander of the Zimbabwean Army, Solomon Mujuru. Since 1980, she has been actively engaged in politics, making her the youngest member of the first cabinet in Zimbabwe, as well as the first female vice president in ZANU-PF government. Today, Mujuru is currently the head of the opposition party called Zimbabwe People First Party, challenging the ZANU-PF regime.
I don't regret, because what I did with my hands, since they are clean hands, is the truth.
I'm happy because in the freedom, you can do whatever you do. Unlike before, we were not able to be allowed to do some work.
South Sudan, Africa's youngest nation, has fought vigorously to attain peace for its people. The vigor has equally been met with vibrant leaders eager to bring about change. Rebecca Nyadeng Garang has stood tall in the quest for unity and peace. Born in 1956 in Sudan, Nyadeng became a politician in the new democracy, serving as the Minister of Roads and Transport and as an advisor to the President General Salva Kiir, who took over the presidency from Nyadeng's late husband, General John Demabio Garang. Prior to Sudan attaining peace during the war days, Nyadeng joined the Southern Army known today as Sudan's People's Liberation Army and the Sudan People's Liberation Movement. She has been a strong advocate for change in the implementation of the comprehensive peace agreement signed between Sudan and South Sudan. She is known for supporting the right of self-determination for South Sudan. The African Women's Studies Center of the University of Nairobi is a center of excellence committed to promoting African women's experiences, worldview scholarship, and policy and institutional development. The center exists to promote intellectual inquiry by and on the experiences of African women through research, teaching, publication, and dissemination.
Stories have been used to dispossess and to malign, but stories can also be used to empower and to humanize. Stories can break the dignity of a people, but stories can also repair that broken dignity.
I have a dream of Africa. See myself in scenes from Africa, valleys, plains, and trees in Africa, growth of black and green in Africa. I have a dream of Africa, to raise the esteem of Africa, to sew up the seams of Africa's genes, and finally reap for Africa. I have a dream of Africa, doing great things in Africa. A future will spring from Africa's wings as queens and kings of Africa. I have a dream that her poets will sing and her children will cling to Africa.